Chapter 17. The Fall. I was swallowed up by a mouth of liquid quicksand, the rapids trapping and spitting me around like I was an ice cube within the depths of a 1,000-foot blender. Gobbled and gurgled and spat into the air, only to be sucked back in and trudged through the same torturous wash cycle. Through barrels of waves my eyes and ears clogged, rendering me deaf and blind, utterly useless while the towering ripples dragged me around. In case you were wondering why Helen Keller doesn't have an illustrious swimming career, there's a reason. Timing was crucial while I descended the whitewater train. Opportunities for breath were few and far between, so much so that if I failed to take an aptly timed inhale, I'd surrender myself to 30-second blights of lung constriction. Limiting those brief periods of torment was paramount, and luckily achievable. While my perpetual glide down the bed of the river ceased to end, after a while the whirlwind drink steadied, a gradual ease that contained the swirls of the tide. With the celestial break from the avalanche, I could regain my two most important senses. My eyes and ears were cleared as I looked forward at Gamma and Gregory. The two of them were locked by the arms, dancing off rocks in synchronicity while they navigated through the maze of midnight. "Slow down!" I called ahead. They were blazing down the river, but within earshot, and growing closer with each meticulous maneuver. Their heads whipped back and gazed at me in wonderment, eyes bulbous and muddled while they splashed forward, accelerating away from my outreached hand. I was left hovering alone in delirium, a solitary abyss that did not last long, as I was greeted by a strange clattering of river water that smacked behind me. We were being followed, a hulking figure with red eyes and an unparalleled fury. His face appeared demented as ever while he stroked his tree trunks through the waves, clumsily striking the water below him with a ponderous force, an image that better resembled a crazed boxer than an elegant swan, a creature who lacked the wherewithal to perform a natural swim, and yet he was gaining ground. He thrusted towards me while he shuffled forward, his fingers dangerously close to netting the fibers of my hair. In my eyes, his asinine flair for fortitude was ludicrous, a predator on death row begging and pleading for his last meal. The war was fought, and yet he marched on, a being deprived of loyalty, family, or credence. It's a highly dangerous combination. While I could personally speed through the stream's gauntlet of obstacles, my would-be attacker wasn't so lucky. Zeta banged against the boulders like an oversized pinball, spearing his shoulders and legs against the stone while the river guided him. He was inadvertently killing himself. To be honest, I'm not sure he minded, solely driven by bloodlust and revenge, which made him an illogical and unpredictable adversary. Not something anyone ever wants to face. The two of us raced forward, following the path of Gregory and Gamma, who were steering themselves smoothly through the onslaught of low-hanging branches and elephant-sized rocks. A clear, resourceful GPS that vanished before our eyes, disappearing while Zeta lunged fruitlessly behind me, nipping at the tips of my toes but unable to find a grasp. Before the giant could take another swipe, we plummeted dozens of feet, a startling plunge off the edge and deep into the fresh water below. Bubbles were soaring all around me while I sank into the river's vacuum, entrenched within the rush of the tide, a crystal-clear portrait that filled my eyes as I opened them. I was entombed by a transparent bliss that failed to cloak the barbaric monstrosity floating mere feet from me. A true shame, as the beast's flaming inferno eyes shimmered through the blue, something that to this day is tattooed to the vessels of my brain. Holding my knees tight to my chest could only help me drift down so far. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to elude the Titan's tentacles. Zeta snatched me from the depths and rang me into the air, his claws clutching around my arm as he flung me back and forth. Violent thrashes that smacked my face against the surface of the river. Shots of pain vibrated against my cheek, with each powerful lashing resembling my skull being thrashed against cement. I was certain my fate had been sealed. Being entangled. I was certain my fate had been sealed. Being entangled in the paws of Frankenstein is an act capable of killing far greater men than I, especially when that man is collapsing down a slab-infested riptide. Alas, the monster failed to murder me. The reason for this miracle? Saved by the two angels on my shoulders, who heaved themselves atop the skyscraper. Gamma and Gregory frantically struck and choked Zeta, while the four of us sank and rose at the river's will. There was a moment of clairvoyance while I spindled through the waves, fully cognizant of the absurdity of my situation and the exhaustion my body was enduring, my mind becoming corrupted with the desire of the giant to end my journey, to put me asleep and wake me from my nightmare. It wasn't until the bludgeoning sight of Gregory being heaved into the air that I was snapped back into hysteria. Gamma was practically coiling her body around Zeta like a cobra, suffocating him while her arms stiffened around his neck. Despite her efforts, the giant repeatedly lunged at me, tossing his body with no regard for his own life, determined to end mine. Dastardly clawing at me, but never coming close. Gamma was protecting me, pulling her son back after each dire jab. Through the vortex of thrashing, the two of them were engulfed alongside the accelerating tide, belligerent and enraged while the pair roared and hissed at each other. As a result of their tumultuous convulsing, they tugged each other forward, far and ahead of both Gregory and I. Both of us transformed into passive observers whose attempts to paddle through the current were thwarted by the wrath of Mother Nature. Like the seething lions before us, we too went stumbling forward. "We have to reach the shore," blurted Gregory, who was hauling himself towards the edge of the river. A luringly secure sod rested a dozen yards away, a still safety net that could pluck us from the never-ending skid. Regrettably, the dozen yards might as well have been a dozen miles. Directing our movements through the turbulence was an impossible feat, an inconsolable truth that magnified in severity once we knew the ghoulish sight at the river's end. Off and in the distance was a narrow, menacing cavity, the summit of the falls. A singular passageway amongst a wall of ugly, jagged, metamorphic slate. Boulders with demonic spear-like abrasions. At the speed we were going, they were enough to kill us. Our alternative, the several 100-foot drop. Enough to kill us. "Gregory, what do we do?" I panted through the futile kicks and strokes towards land. I don't know, Walt," he exclaimed. His eyes closed, while he muttered prayers under his breath. It was an answer he'd likely given me before, the one I wasn't willing to accept. "We have to try something," I yelled. I then clenched Gregory's shoulder and pulled him close. If he wasn't going to at least try to escape, I'd do it for him. We both speared into the rush, digging our hands through the howling white froth. Gamma and Zeta's melee halted to a stop as the two creatures realized their rapidly approaching mousetrap, ready to snap them limb from limb. Each vaulted themselves off the other, the Colossus diverting left, and the mother diverted right. While the monster was able to use his mass and pound through the tide, his mother wasn't so fortunate. She was completely stuck, raveled in an impasse of fatigue, unable to stir through the submerged tornado pulling at her legs. She was going to fall. It was inevitable. The canal was inhaling every milliliter of river water and spitting it topside over the brink. If she couldn't move in time, she'd join them on their precarious plunge, and if we couldn't move in time, so would we. Death was a fate that seemed preposterous to avoid, as I came to realize dodging the fall's grasp was impossible. I couldn't reach the haven, no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't save Gamma, and I sure as hell couldn't carry the lumbering weight with me through the tide, especially considering the static bag of dumbbells wouldn't even move. "Kick, Gregory, kick!" I screamed. He didn't answer, his mind focusing on his verses while we sank. "Gregory, wake up! Damn it, I can't make it without you!" I yelled. His eyes flickered open and beamed at me. "Let the ocean take us, Walt. We can't fight it anymore. God will protect us," he softly answered. I pulled him closer. "I'm not giving up," I said as I charged to the side. "If we stray off center, the rock will take us," he answered. "And if we submit to the river, the fall will take us," I cried back. He calmly shook his head and smiled. Trust me and we'll live. I'm sure of it," he stated. The two of us then held each other tightly as we drifted to the center. Ahead, Gamma was inching towards the edge of the crest, yelping in anguish while she lied paralyzed on her back from exhaustion. Zeta, who was approaching the shore, looked back upon his mother distraught, almost regretful, while he paused and waited for her plummet. "Son! Please help, son!" croaked Gamma as she towed the line of the empty void. Her voice was sullen and frail, a desperate plea offered to a tragic soul's only hope, a mother asking her boy to do the impossible. An offer he took. "Mother!" yelled Zeta, who then speared back into the depths and dove to the center. The giant then plucked his mother from the waves and pulled her to his chest, forming a protective shell that saved Gamma from her fall. A shell that was immediately punctured by the wall of rubble that speared through his back. Zeta hung against the dark barrier like a picture frame, still and calm while he dangled from the air, teary-eyed and exultant while he held his mother in a loving embrace. Our fleeting glimpse of the affair was stifled by the sight of the luminous moon ahead of us. Despite our descent, we were still high above the earth, so high that if I extended my arm, I could have seemingly touched the blistering sphere before me. A lovely picture that eased my tensions while we slogged forward, teetering on the edge of the drop, arms and bodies entangled, while we accepted our fate, accepting the fall. It wasn't a graceful dive or delicate dip into the heavenly pool below. My body fell weightless, as if I was catapulted off the edge of the universe, my eyes fading to black, closed in an effort to distort my brain, to escape from the wicked sensation that ripped the intestines from my stomach and through the gullet of my mouth. A satanic slingshot down hundreds of feet, a quick 5-second flash that ripped Gregory from my grasp and submerged me feet first into the bowels of the sea. We had made an impact. My muscles and bones tricked by the soft coating of periwinkle. In truth, hiding under the lagoon was a fat slab of concrete. Now look. I know I've complained about pain to you in the past, described in gritty detail the broken noses and stings in my feet. Do me a favor. Go back in time and punch that bumbling idiot square in the face, because in that one wretched moment, sunk under the cement of swamp, that was the most surreal moment of my life. The one in which I endured true pain. Not measly bumps and bruises, full, acute fractures. My right leg had snapped. It was undeniable. I'd broken my leg twice in high school. I fully knew the sound and twinge it makes when cartilage explodes beneath flesh. A familiar pain, unlike the one felt on my sides, screaming in torment, aching as if a shotgun was rammed into my skin and somebody pulled the trigger. Ribs on both sides of my torso were cracked and left in shambles, the ends of which plunged into one of my lungs. It was an injury that was even worse than I imagined as I floated to the surface and took my first breath, a simple necessity that elicited a tight pain in my chest. Despite my laundry list of ailments, with a slow crane of my neck, all of my physical duress faded away. Not because of happiness or joy, but because of the sight of my best friend floating face first atop the pool. His body was twitching, but for the most part motionlessness, unable to flip himself over while he suffered in the breathless gulf. Splashing towards him through muffled agony, despite the urgency, I traveled sluggishly, my face dipping in and out of the serene drink, hardly by choice as I couldn't swim, kicking my prune-shattered leg with all my might until I could flip the man towards oxygen. He instantly vomited up fluid and sank back onto the depths. "Get over here," I grunted while I delicately lifted him to the surface, fearing I could paralyze him with a single error. I then glided Gregory towards the verdant meadow that circled around the pond's outer rim. "You're going to be fine, buddy. You're going to be fine. We always end up fine," I whispered under my breath while I pulled him ashore. At that point in time, the message I was sending was meant for the both of us. I could lie to you and say I was brave and confident in my ability to save the man's life. But you know me far too well. I was panic-stricken, crumbling while anxiety flared. But I failed to quit under the weight of hysteria because I needed to help him. "Greg, listen to me. Tell me what's wrong and tell me how I can fix this," I pleaded as he lied on the floor, blood fuming from his mouth like a stuck pig. Walter, you sweet boy. You are very, very kind," he said through fits of coughs. He was damaged beyond repair, riddled with blood vessels pulsing through his flesh. I crawled close to him and peered down his sapphire eyes. "We're going to live. I trust you, Greg. You told me we'd make it through this, and we are. You just have to hold on a bit longer. And I know it's hard, and I know it hurts, but you just have to hold on." A pale face looked up at me and smiled. "Okay. You have to listen to me. Every word, Walter. This is important," he whimpered. Gregory's words were interrupted by the hoarse thumping of blades in the air. The both of our necks sprang upward and basked in the wonder of a helicopter zooming overhead, its glow blinking and sputtering like strobe lights, flashing blue and golden beams that swirled around the island. Lights that flashed and passed our eyes while the chopper ascended towards the blazing bonfire in the sky. "They're gonna find us," I assured the broken man as he simmered in grief. "They're gonna find us lying here and fall to their knees in shock. Two lucky fools supposed to be long dead. It'll be beautiful, Greg. They'll fly us into the air and fix us, put food in our bellies and make us nice and pretty again. Then when we're back to full strength, they'll let us go home. Home where we'll be treated like heroes. Survivors who live to tell the tale. You and me, buddy, no one else. But I need you to hold on. Please, please, don't let go. Gregory, you're going to make it." He then put his cold, trembling hand to my face and grinned. "Listen, Walt, you don't need me anymore. The truth is, you probably never needed me. I'm not going to make it off the island. It's just not possible. You'll have to find a way without me this time," he exclaimed. I couldn't wrap my head around his words. How could he give up? He never gave up, especially when help was on our doorstep, when we were so close. "Of course I need you. You and I, what we've been through, it should have killed us, but it didn't. It didn't because we did this together, Greg. And I'm not changing that. Every time I needed you, I was saved. Every time, I pleaded. He shook his head. This island, Walter. This island, Walter. This whole place. No one's going to believe you. Our world we discovered, the people we've met. If you cling to it, it will damage the rest of your life. The truth will take hold of your mind and betray you. You'll turn back into that same sheltered boy who was afraid the whole planet was out to get him. Afraid to reveal himself to another in fear they might not like what they see. Well, I've seen what you are. The man you've come to be, and I assure you, it is a sight to behold. A triumph, Walter. I was lucky to have met you, to have experienced your true self. Stop with the goodbyes. You're not going anywhere, I said through tears. They're here, Walter. My family. My wife. My son. They're calling for me. I can finally see them. They're so close, he mumbled under soft breaths. His eyes then rolled to the back of his skull as he muttered faint prayers under his breath. My head crashed onto his chest, sobbing and pleading for him to stay. I waited for an answer, resting for quite some time atop his beating heart, while his words withered away into sleep. My eyes grew heavy as I sat atop the emerald lawn, a soft, cozy cushion that sang a sweet song of comfort as I fell to the floor, pain melting off of me as I gazed into the night sky. The monstrous nightlight shining above, jabbing at my pupils while they dazed into slumber. From the small openings of my sockets, I could vaguely see shooting stars striking across the dark theater. Stunning performances that bloomed before me as the black haze fizzled away into light. It was light that brought with it a chorus of voices. Chattering danced in the distance. I tilted my head upwards and rubbed the drowsiness off my face, waiting for the next batch of monsters to arrive, for my final level to finish me off. Out through the jungle's nest emerged a swarm of flashlights, flickering through the cloud of brush and into the roots of my eyes. I heaved myself upward and witnessed 3 human beings enter through the crater's entrance. "Hi! Hello! Please help!" I shouted, waving in a frenzy, desperate for their attention. 3 white beams and shot at me as they answered my calls, blinding me while they hurried over. The 3 of them sprinted to my side, baffled and perplexed, while they stared at me, simply gawking as if I had 2 heads. Finally, one of them approached and cautiously knelt beside me. "What's your name?" asked a woman with a thick accent. She was middle-aged, wrinkled, with streaky locks, dirty blonde curls that fluttered across her face, gazing calmly while she held her light into my face. Behind her stood 2 followers, a petite young woman with jet black hair, and a strapping man bedecked with light armor. In his hands was a tranquilizer gun that he held firmly against his chest. "My name's Walter Mai. I'm a survivor of a plane crash. I'm also the one who called you guys on the transmitter for help." The followers in the back shot each other a look and leaned in for a whisper. I analyzed the pair, curious as ever, until the woman before me snapped her fingers to get my attention. "Are you okay, Walter?" she asked, entirely sincere, although a funny question in my eyes. Anyone with a working pair of eyes could tell I wasn't okay. "I'm in no. Actually, I'm fine. Gregory, the man right next to me. He's not doing well. He's the one who needs your help, I exclaimed. The young woman then walked over to Gregory and started examining him. What happened to you? Asked the woman before me. We fell, I answered. She appeared confused. You fell? Fell from where? I pointed to the mouth of the waterfall, which was splitting away profusely, loud as a siren as it buzzed around the crater. The man in the back chuckled to himself. Are you insane? He clamored. The older woman shot him a nasty glare and turned back at me. Ignore him. What do you know about this place, Walter? She asked. I was hesitant to answer as the mug behind her inched forward and smirked at me. I know about the creatures who live here. I know about the doctor's experiments, the ones he hides from the world, the monstrosities he has committed, I answered, truth spewing from my lips. Where is this doctor you speak of? She replied, her face stern in emotionlessness while she analyzed me. The man's once solid smirk faded from his face. We will take care of you, Walter. Bring you home, keep you safe, as long as you're willing to cooperate. Everything's going to be okay. Rest assured. You'll be out of here in no time, she exclaimed, smiling while she offered her hand. My leg it's broken, I exclaimed through fits of pain, as a feeling shot back into my nerves. No need to fear. We have a stretcher in the boat that can carry you. Henry! Madeline! Go fetch that for us, would you? Said the blonde woman. The two followers leaped into the air and started heading back towards the brush. Wait, my friend! Is there anything you could do for him? I frantically asked. The young woman peered back at me bewildered, her eyebrows raising to the air. He's dead. Internal hemorrhaging. I'm sorry, Walter. He's gone, she answered, her face melting with melancholy. I couldn't believe her words. I could still hear his heart beating. I could feel the throbbing from his chest. He's alive, I snapped back. The three of them appeared startled as my words echoed around the lonesome crater. I then put my fingers to his wrist and again found the pulse. In a frenzy, I raised his arm to the three strangers and pleaded for their assistance. Please do something for him. He hasn't much time left, I cried. The older woman looked down at me with a peculiar glow. I could tell she thought I was a bizarre human being, like I was making this all up. Walter, listen to me. We are going to get you the help you need, I promise, she stated. I then thrusted myself upward and heaved her towards me. Please, you're not hearing me. I don't need help. My friend needs help. Right now, I shouted. Walter, get off her, shouted the young woman, who appeared frightened before me. I'm begging you, please, I repeated, clutching the woman's collar while she tried to push away. I wouldn't let her go, unable to give up on Gregory's last hope. The burly man then approached and put his weapon to my neck. Walter, this is your last chance, he bellowed. I'm not giving up on him. Please, just help. Gregory, just help him, please, I exclaimed, and then whipped my hand against the mouth of the gun, barely moving it an inch. The man then took a deep breath, calmed his nerves, and pulled the trigger. I collapsed to the ground, my eyes dimming into shadow. In an instant I transported into my world of sleep and dream, safe inside my bubble of solace, away from the grim reality in which I dwelled. Finally alone. Finally at peace.